Welcome. Today we are tracing 500 years of Persian history, not as a list of dynasties, but as the story of a civilization repeatedly forced to defend its sovereignty, reimagine its institutions, and decide how faith should live in public life. We begin in 1524, when Shah Ismail I died and his 10-year-old son, Tahmasp, inherited a young Safavid state. Why is that a useful starting point?
Because by then the Safavids had already done something historically decisive. They had brought much of Persia under a single political authority and made Twelver Shi'ism the state's official religious tradition. That did not turn every inhabitant of the land into a Shia overnight. The social transformation was gradual, uneven, and often difficult, but it gave later Iranian history one of its most enduring frames. Persian political identity increasingly developed alongside Shia institutions, scholarship, memory, and sacred geography.
So this is not merely a court history. It is also a history of how a religious culture acquired public institutions, seminaries, endowments, shrine networks, jurists, rituals, and a vocabulary of justice. Exactly. And it is worth avoiding two easy mistakes. The first is to imagine Safavid Persia as a modern nation-state. It was not. It was a dynastic empire of cities, tribes, provinces, merchants, and local powers. The second is to treat religion as a decorative layer on top of politics. Under the Safavids, legitimacy, law, kingship, and religious allegiance were deeply entangled. And the young Shah Tahmasp inherited this project at its most vulnerable point. He did. The Qizilbash tribal forces that had made the Safavid state possible were also powerful enough to challenge it. Their rivalries and the pressure of the Ottoman and Uzbek frontiers meant that the survival of the dynasty was far from certain. Yet Tahmasp's long reign would show that Persia could survive not only through battlefield victory, but through patience, administrative reorganization, and strategic restraint. Let us stay with Tahmasp. He ruled for more than 50 years, but is often overshadowed by Shah Abbas the Great. What was his real achievement?
Tahmasp's achievement was survival and consolidation. During his childhood, Qizilbash factions competed for influence, and the realm endured serious internal conflict. By the 1530s, he had strengthened royal authority, curtailed some tribal power, used Persian administrators more extensively, and developed military capacities better suited to Ottoman pressure. The Safavids had learned from the disaster of Chaldiran in 1514, where Ottoman firearms had exposed the weaknesses of cavalry warfare alone.
His approach against Sultan Suleiman was famously defensive.
Yes, he did not seek theatrical open-field battles against a larger Ottoman army. He withdrew, denied supplies, avoided committing to disadvantageous terms, and relied on Persian geography. The Peace of Amasya in 1555 created a significant period of stability. 2 years later, he moved the capital from vulnerable Tabriz to Qazvin, deeper inside the realm.
It is a useful lesson in political maturity. Not every victory is won by charging forward.
Precisely. Later, Shah Abbas I inherited a stronger structure. He moved the capital to Isfahan, reformed the army and bureaucracy, revived trade, and transformed the city into one of the great urban centres of the early modern world. Its mosques, bridges, squares, and bazaars expressed a political vision. Persian kingship, Shia piety, commercial ambition, and artistic confidence were all being made visible in stone and tile.
And this is when Shia scholarship became increasingly institutional. It did. Scholars from regions including Jabal Amil, Bahrain and Iraq contributed to the development of legal and intellectual life. But this was not a simple story of state command. It involved negotiations between rulers, jurists, local communities, and older Persian traditions. By the 17th century, Twelver Shi'ism had become central to Iranian public culture in a way that would outlast the Safavid dynasty itself.
Yet, in 1722, Isfahan fell. How could a state that had seemed so formidable collapse?
The late Safavid state suffered from weak leadership, financial strain, regional revolts, and fragile military structures. Ghilzai Afghan forces under Mahmud Hotak besieged Isfahan, and the fall of the city was a national trauma. It did not simply end a dynasty, it shattered the political order that had held much of the country together.
This is the period in which Nader Shah emerges.
Nader began as a military commander, restoring territory and order in the name of the Safavids. In 1736, he took the throne himself. His military campaigns were extraordinary in scale, extending Persian power into the Caucasus, Central Asia, and India. But his reign also shows the limits of military genius without durable institutions. The empire expanded rapidly, yet it could not be held together after his death.
Nader also tried to alter the sectarian relationship with the Ottomans. He did. At Najaf, he promoted recognition of Jafari jurisprudence as a fifth school within Sunni legal discourse. His motives included diplomacy and imperial strategy, yet the attempt did not replace the deep Shia identity formed over the Safavid period. In fact, it reveals how firmly that identity had already taken root.
And after Nader came more fragmentation until Karim Khan Zomd.
Karim Khan did not style himself Shah. He preferred Vakil al-Rawaya, representative of the people. From Shiraz, he brought a measure of stability and relative prosperity to central and southern Iran. His court was less imperial in ambition than Nader's, but it left an image of practical governance, commerce, and urban rebuilding. Still, the long-term question remained unanswered. Who could reunify Iran on a lasting basis while protecting it from stronger neighbouring and European powers?
The Qajars answer that question in the late 18th century, but they inherit a much harder world.
Very much harder. Aga Mohammed Khan Qajar reunited much of Iran and established Tehran as the dynastic centre. Yet the Qajar period was marked by the growing pressure of Russia and Britain. The Russo-Persian Wars ended with painful territorial losses in the Caucasus under the treaties of Gulistan and Turkmenchai. These were not merely lines moved on a map. They reshaped families, trade routes, and Iran's sense of vulnerability.
This is also a period in which the ulama and shrine networks become politically important in new ways.
Yes, the Shia scholarly class was not simply an instrument of the Qajar court. The development of marja'iyya, transnational shrine connections, and independent religious finance meant that senior jurists could become moral voices beyond the state. The tobacco protest of 1880 to 1892 is the clearest example. A British monopoly concession provoked widespread opposition. Mirza Shirazi's ruling against tobacco became a symbol of popular resistance to foreign economic control.
What matters is that people did not experience the concession only as an economic matter. It became a question of dignity, sovereignty, and moral authority.
Exactly. Merchants, clerics, urban households, and ordinary consumers participated. The protest created a political memory. A religiously articulated public could challenge a ruler and an external power at the same time. That memory would soon matter enormously.
It also complicates the cliché that religion and modern political consciousness were opposites. It does. In Iran, arguments about law, justice, foreign influence and reform often used religious language as well as newer constitutional ideas. The two were not identical, but they were repeatedly in conversation.
That takes us to the constitutional revolution of 1905 to 1911. Why does it still matter so much? Because it was a foundational argument about power. Protesters sought to limit arbitrary monarchy, establish a majlis, and make law rather than personal rule central to government. Different groups wanted different things. Merchants wanted protection from corruption and concessionary politics. Intellectuals debated rights and representation. Clerics disagreed among themselves about the relationship between Sharia, constitutional law, and public authority. The language of adalat, justice, was important. Very important. Justice was not imported as a foreign slogan alone. It had deep roots in Perso-Islamic political thought and in Shia expectations that power should not be arbitrary. Figures such as Ayatollah Mohammad Hussein Naini developed influential arguments for constitutional restraint as a means of limiting tyranny during the imam's occultation. Other clerics took a different view. The point is not that there was one clerical position, it is that the constitutional debate was also a serious Shia debate about legitimate authority. Yet foreign interference returned with particular force.
The Anglo-Russian Convention of 1907 divided Persia into spheres of influence without Persian consent. This was devastating to the constitutional project and to national sovereignty. The Majlis was bombarded, the country became a theatre of rival external powers, and the Qajar state weakened further.
So the constitutional revolution gave Iran a permanent political vocabulary: law, parliament, justice, sovereignty. But it did not solve the problem of power.
Exactly. It produced institutions and hopes, but the conditions for their stable success were repeatedly undermined by domestic division, economic weakness, and foreign intervention.
In 1925, Reza Shah ends the Qajar dynasty. How should we understand the Pahlavi project fairly?
It was a powerful state-building project. Reza Shah centralized the military, expanded bureaucracy, built roads and railways, promoted modern education, and tried to reduce the autonomy of tribes and clerical institutions. Many Iranians welcomed aspects of order, infrastructure, and national revival. But the project was also authoritarian, often dismissive of religious and local forms of life, and deeply coercive in its treatment of dissent.
The compulsory unveiling policy remains a powerful symbol of that coercion.
Yes, the 1936 Kashf-e hijab policy was not simply a debate about clothing. It was an assertion that the state could redefine social respectability, public religion, and women's appearance by decree. For many religious families, it represented humiliation and exclusion rather than liberation.
Reza Shah left in 1941 under Anglo-Soviet pressure, and his son inherited a more open but unstable country.
Mohammad Reza Shah inherited both greater political pluralism and greater foreign dependence. The 1953 coup against Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, organised with British and American involvement, became central to Iranian political memory. It strengthened the monarchy, but also deepened public suspicion of external powers.
Then came the White Revolution, and the rise of Imam Khomeini as a central critic.
The White Revolution combined land reform, enfranchisement, and rapid social change with centralized royal power. Supporters saw modernization, critics saw dislocation, inequality, cultural subordination, and political repression. In 1963, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini emerged as a prominent voice against the Shah's policies, and later against the regime's relationship with foreign power. His exile did not silence him. It made his message travel.
The revolution of 1979 is often described as inevitable in hindsight, but it was not inevitable, was it?
No, it was the result of converging forces: political repression, economic strain, uneven modernization, anger at foreign influence, networks of mosques and bazaars, secular and religious opposition, and the unique moral authority of Khomeini's leadership. Shia practices of mourning and the 40-day cycle of commemoration helped give the protests a rhythm of remembrance, grief, and mobilization.
The monarchy fell, Khomeini returned, and the Islamic Republic was established through referendum. But the revolution's coalition was broader than the system that later emerged.
That is right. Nationalists, leftists, liberals, clerics, and ordinary religious families did not all imagine the same future. The revolutionary state consolidated through intense internal conflict and external crisis. The US embassy takeover became an international confrontation, but Iran's most defining early trial was the war launched by Saddam Hussein's Iraq in 1980.
In Iran, that war is remembered as the sacred defense.
And understandably so, because it involved invasion, siege, mass sacrifice, and a struggle to defend territorial integrity. The war was devastating. Cities were attacked, families were displaced, and vast numbers of people were killed or injured. Yet it also formed a powerful national memory of resistance, in which religious language, Karbala imagery, national sovereignty, and ordinary endurance became closely linked. It is important that a listener hears both dimensions. This was a formative defense of the country, and it was also a human catastrophe. Precisely. A serious history does not erase either the conviction of those who defended Iran or the immense cost they paid. Imam Khomeini died in 1989. What changed after that? The Islamic Republic entered a new phase. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei became supreme leader, while Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani led post-war reconstruction. The state faced the practical demands of rebuilding infrastructure, managing an oil economy, and re-entering regional and global politics. Then in 1997, Mohammad Khatami's election brought a new political vocabulary. It did. Civil society, reform, the rule of law, and dialogue among civilizations. But the Islamic Republic contains multiple institutions with different sources of authority: elected governments, parliament, courts, the supreme leader, the Guardian Council, clerical networks, and security institutions do not always move in the same direction. Reformist hopes therefore faced structural limits and political resistance. And by 2009, the disputed election and mass protests showed how deep the disagreements had become. Yes, the Green Movement revealed a significant part of society demanding accountability and political change, while the state responded through its own language of order, sovereignty, and security. Subsequent protests, economic pressures, and social debates have shown that Iran remains far from politically uniform. Yet the country is more than its political arguments. It is a civilization of poets, seminaries, engineers, bazaris, scientists, pilgrimage, cinema, families, and an enormous diaspora. Exactly. Reducing Iran to a headline, whether about revolution, sanctions, or nuclear diplomacy, misses the depth of its social and intellectual life.
How should we speak about contemporary Iran without repeating the usual slogans?
By starting with complexity. Iran has experienced external sanctions, regional conflict, diplomatic negotiation, technological development, economic hardship, migration, protests, and cultural change, often all at once. The 2015 nuclear agreement, the American withdrawal from it in 2018, and the return of severe sanctions affected ordinary economic life as well as high politics.
The language of sovereignty still matters because it has such a long history behind it. From the Caucasian losses, to the tobacco protest, to the 1907 convention, to 1953, to the war with Iraq. Precisely. Whether one agrees with every policy of the Islamic Republic or not, one cannot understand modern Iranian political instinct without understanding that history of intervention and pressure. At the same time, sovereignty should not become a reason to ignore the aspirations and difficulties of Iran's own people. A country is not made strong merely by resisting outsiders. It must also cultivate justice, trust, and opportunity within.
And that returns us to the older vocabulary we have heard throughout this conversation: justice, dignity, and responsibility.
It does. Those words were present in Safavid debates about authority, in Qajar protest, in constitutional arguments, in religious opposition to the Pahlavi monarchy, and in the rhetoric of the revolution. Their meaning has changed, but they remain alive.
Before we conclude, we should make room for parts of Iranian life that are often absent from political histories. Persia is not only a story of courts, wars, and revolutions. It is also a civilization of language, family memory, pilgrimage, craft, poetry, food, mourning, education, and migration. That is essential. Persian language and literature have provided continuity even when political orders changed. Hafez, Sadi, Rumi, Ferdowsi, and later poets do not belong to one faction or one era. Their words are recited in homes, schools, ceremonies, and private moments of reflection. They give people a way to speak about love, loss, justice, longing, and the fragility of power. And shrine culture is part of that living memory. Mashhad, Qum, Shiraz, Ray, and countless local shrines have been more than religious sites. They have been places of travel, charity, learning, healing, commerce, and family connection. Yes, a shrine city brings together theology and ordinary life. A visitor may arrive with a philosophical question, a family worry, a political hope, or simply the desire to remember someone they love. This helps explain why religious culture cannot be measured only through laws or elections. It is woven into rhythms of hospitality, mourning, celebration, and moral imagination. Women's experience also needs more than a symbolic mention. Across these 5 centuries, women have lived within family, religious, economic, and legal structures that changed greatly, but they have never been passive figures in the story. Quite right. Women participated in household economies, patronized religious buildings, transmitted learning and custom, created literary and artistic work, joined protest movements, and carried social memory across generations. Modern reforms, state policies, and revolutionary changes all affected women differently, depending on class, locality, education, religion, and family circumstance. A serious history avoids turning them into either an abstract victim or an abstract proof of progress. It listens to the variety of their lived experience. The same is true of the Iranian diaspora. Many families left because of study, work, war, politics, or economic difficulty, but they did not leave history behind. No,
Diaspora communities have kept Persian language, Muharram gatherings, Nowruz, poetry, food, and family memory alive across Britain, North America, Europe, the Gulf, South Asia, and elsewhere. They also disagree with one another about Iran, sometimes intensely. Yet that disagreement itself shows how strong the connection remains. It is interesting that even people who disagree about the state may still share a deep attachment to Kabbalah, Persian poetry, the smell of saffron rice, a grandmother's prayers, or the image of a city they have not seen for years. History lives at that level. Political institutions matter enormously, but they do not exhaust a civilization. The reason Persian history has endured through such upheaval is that memory has many homes: a book, a shrine, a bazaar, a school, a family table, a poem recited at the right moment. Perhaps this gives us a better way to understand identity. It is not something frozen in the past. It is something carried, questioned, and renewed. Precisely. And that is why a formal history podcast should be careful with labels. Persia, Iran, Shia, Muslim, modern, traditional, national, and global are not sealed boxes. They are living inheritances, continually interpreted by real people.
When we look back over 5 centuries, what is the deepest continuity?
Persia has repeatedly had to rebuild after crisis, after tribal conflict, invasion, territorial loss, foreign pressure, revolution, and war. Its endurance has not come from one dynasty or one ideology alone. It has come from a civilization capable of renewing its institutions while preserving a deep cultural memory.
And Twelver Shi'ism has been one of the major threads in that memory, not merely as a doctrine, but as a language of suffering, justice, moral restraint, scholarship, leadership, and hope.
Yes, a careful history should neither romanticize that role nor ignore it. It should recognize that Shia memory helped Iranians articulate resistance to tyranny and domination, while also shaping real institutions and political disagreements. The story is human, precisely because it is not simple.
Perhaps that is the most important point. Persia's history is not a tale of permanent decline, nor a tale of uninterrupted glory. It is a long conversation between power and conscience, between sovereignty and justice, between inheritance and renewal. And that conversation continues. To understand Iran today, one must listen not only to the news of the moment, but to the echoes of Isfahan, Najaf, Karbala, Tehran, Shiraz, Qum, and the countless homes in which history is remembered as something personal. Thank you for listening to Persia, 500 years of history. We hope this conversation has offered not a final verdict, but a more careful way of seeing a civilization whose past continues to shape the present.